All right, let's dive into the world of the ocelot.
The mini jaguar, right?
Yeah, the mini jaguar. We'll be exploring all sorts of fascinating facts about them today, based on this really cool YouTube video from Animalogic, actually. It's called Ocelot, the mini jaguar.
Catchy title.
For sure. So before we get into the specifics, just how big are these ocelots? I mean, are they like house cat size, or is it something totally different?
Oh no, think bigger, way bigger.
How big are we talking?
Well, they can be almost a meter long,
Whoa.
and they can weigh up to 15 kilograms. That's like a medium-sized dog.
Dang, that's definitely not your typical house cat. And I guess that makes them the largest in their genus. Leopardus, is that right?
That's right, the largest of the Leopardus genus. But they're related to jaguars too, right?
Yeah, the video mentioned that. So how does that size comparison work out?
Well, both ocelots and jaguars, they're both part of the Panthera family,
Oh.
which also includes, lions and tigers and leopards, all those iconic big cats.
So basically, they got all the cool features of those bigger cats, but in like a smaller package.
That's one way to put it.
I like it. But the video also said that ocelots live in a ton of different habitats. Like, how diverse are we talking here?
Okay, imagine this. You could see an ocelot in, like, the Sonoran Desert, right? And then you could go to the Amazon rainforest and still find ocelots living there.
Wow, so pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, their range is huge. It stretches from the south of the United States all the way down to Argentina, all kinds of ecosystems, deserts, rainforests, you name it.
That's crazy. Talk about adaptable.
Right, and their paws are a great example of that adaptability. The video called them all-terrain paws.
All-terrain paws, I like that. So what does that mean exactly?
Well, they're designed for life in trees, on the ground, and even in water.
Whoa, hold on. Paws that can handle climbing trees, walking on land, and swimming. That's insane.
It's pretty incredible, and it's a big part of why they're so successful in all these different environments. But if you had to pick a favorite habitat for an ocelot,
What would it be?
it would probably be a dense tropical forest.
Okay, that makes sense. Lots of cover for a stealthy predator like an ocelot. And speaking of stealth, their camouflage is amazing.
Right.
All those rosettes and blotches and streaks.
Yeah, it's like living art.
Seriously. But I guess it's not just about looking cool, right?
No, of course not. It's all about survival.
So how did that work?
Well, think about it. They're nocturnal predators moving through a forest floor with, like, dappled sunlight. That coat breaks up their outline. It makes them almost invisible to prey.
Like they just blend right into the forest.
Exactly. And then you add their hunting style, Ocelots are super silent and agile hunters.
Makes sense.
They can travel, like, 6.7 kilometers every single night looking for food.
Whoa, that's some serious dedication to dinner.
Right. And here's the crazy part. They usually catch something new to eat for every kilometer they walk.
That's a pretty good success rate. So what's on the menu for these guys? I mean, what do they actually eat?
Well, most of their diet is small stuff, like rodents, lizards, snakes.
Okay, so they're not super picky eaters.
Not really. They take what they can get, but they've been known to go after bigger prey, too, if they get the chance.
Like what?
Young deer, even monkeys sometimes.
Whoa. How do they take down something that could be faster or stronger than them?
It's all about strategy. They're masters of patience and ambush. They use their camouflage and their quiet movements to get close to their prey.
So they just wait for the perfect moment and then bam.
Exactly. That pounce is super fast and powerful. There's not much chance of escape. The video actually showed an ocelot stalking its prey, waiting, and then jumping from a tree branch to catch it. It was pretty cool.
Sounds intense. So what about their social lives? Are they like loners or do they hang out in groups?
Ocelots are pretty solitary creatures, especially the males. They're very territorial.
Okay, how territorial are we talking here?
A male ocelot's territory can be enormous, like 45 square kilometers.
45 square kilometers. That's like bigger than some cities.
Right, so how do they defend such a huge area if they're mostly alone? Well, their communication method isn't exactly subtle.
Sounds interesting. Tell me more.
They're big on scent marking, mostly through urine spraying.
Okay, so not the most glamorous way to mark your territory.
Not really, no, but it's effective.
I bet it is. So they just like spray on trees and stuff to let other ocelots know they're there?
Pretty much. And it's not just urine. They have scent glands on their cheeks and paws, too.
So they rub those on things as well.
Exactly. It's like a scent billboard. announcing their presence.
So it's a sight and smell kind of message, letting everyone know who's in charge.
You got it. It's all about setting boundaries and avoiding conflict. Resources can be scarce in the wild.
Right, makes sense. So they're lone wolves, basically, except when they're looking for a mate.
Exactly. When it's time to mate, they put aside their solitary ways and try to find each other. And unlike some animals that mate for life, ocelots are, well, a bit more open-minded.
Open-minded. You mean they play the field a bit?
Let's just say they like to keep their options open when it comes to partners. They meet with multiple individuals throughout their lives.
Interesting. So it's all about passing on their genes,
Yeah.
even if it means breaking their solo act for a while. But what happens after they mate? Do they stay together to raise the kittens?
Well, not exactly. Once mating happens, the female's pretty much on her own for the next 12 weeks. That's how long the gestation period is.
So it's all up to mom to bring those little ocelots into the world. I can only imagine how cute those kittens must be.
Oh, they are adorable, but they're also tough. They're born into a challenging world, and they have to learn quickly.
Right, and we'll get into those early months and how they develop after a quick break. All right, we're back and ready to keep learning about these incredible ocelots. Last we left off talking about those super cute kittens, right?
Right.
And how they have to basically learn how to survive in like a really tough environment.
Yeah, those first few months are super important for them. They're learning all the essential ocelot skills from their mom and just like soaking up everything around them.
Like Ocelot School or something.
Ocelot University.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what classes are they taking besides like Napping 101 and Cuteness for Beginners?
Well, scent communication is definitely a core class.
Makes sense. We talked about how important scent is for ocelots.
Right. And the kittens, they start picking up on all those scent cues super early.
So even though they're born with their eyes closed, they're already getting like a scent education.
Exactly. Smell is their main way of navigating the world for those first few weeks. Finding their mom, getting back to the den, recognizing their siblings.
It's like a built-in scent GPS.
Pretty much.
Cool. But what about those other ways of communicating, like all those meows and yowls? Do they start practicing those right away too?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It starts with those little chirps and meows, the kind that just melt your heart. But those sounds are actually super important. They're like the foundation for all those different sounds they'll make as adults.
So they're kind of like babbling their way to ocelot language.
Exactly. They're learning to use different pitches and tones and stuff, figuring out how to use their voices in different situations.
That's awesome. And their mom helps them with that too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She'll respond to their calls and kind of reinforce the ones that are correct, I guess you could say.
So it's instinct and learning working together, just like
Right.
with humans and language.
Oh.
Cool. Okay, but what about those playful hunting behaviors we talked about? Do they learn from that too?
Yeah, that's like stalking and pouncing 101 at Ocelot U.
Heck yeah, nice. But it seems like fun and games to us, right?
Right. But it's actually laying the groundwork for their hunting success later on.
So all that chasing their tails and pouncing on each other, that's like actual training.
Exactly. They're developing those skills like agility, coordination, all that stuff. They're learning how to read body language, how to anticipate movements.
It's like they're turning their den into a mini ocelot training camp.
Yeah, something like that.
Pretty cool. Okay, but we also talked about how scent marking is a big deal for adult ocelots. Do the kittens start doing that too? The spraying and stuff.
Well, maybe not with the same accuracy as the adults, but they definitely start experimenting with scent marking from a pretty young age, rubbing their cheeks on things, copying their mom,
Right.
and even trying to spray, like do the whole thing, but it's usually pretty hilarious to watch.
I can imagine. So basically they're figuring out how to use scent to, communicate and set boundaries.
Right. And those behaviors become more refined as they get older. It's all part of growing up and becoming independent.
Makes sense. But speaking of independence, when do these young ocelots actually leave their mom and go off on their own? Is there like a specific age or something?
It varies a bit, but usually around 10 months to a year, they start exploring further from their mom's territory.
Oh.
They're like testing their independence, and that's when things can get tricky.
Tricky how?
Well, remember how we talked about how huge their territories can be?
Yeah.
Well, finding a good spot to establish their own home range can be tough. especially with, habitat getting fragmented and all that.
Yeah, human development and all that.
Yeah.
It's got to be hard to find a good spot. So
Okay.
how do they like navigate all that? Do they have any tricks for finding new territories?
Oh, yeah, they're super adaptable. They'll often use like corridors of vegetation, following stream beds, forest edges, even things like fences or ditches, anything to move between patches of habitat.
So they're using like obstacles to their advantage, turning them into pathways to new areas.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to protect those corridors, those connections between different habitats.
Right.
We can keep those intact. It'll help ocelots disperse, find mates, all that good stuff.
Yeah. It's like we're building ocelot bridges, helping them get around in a world that's becoming more and more fragmented. I like it. Okay, so let's say a young ocelot finds a good spot. How do they, like, officially make it theirs? Do they just, like, put up a sign that says, keep out?
Yeah, not quite. Remember all that scent marking stuff we talked about?
Yeah, the spraying and rubbing and all that.
Well, that's how they establish their territory. They use those scent marks to say, this is mine.
Like drawing property lines, but with smells instead of fences.
Exactly. And those scents tell other ocelots a lot. Like if they're male or female, how old they are, if they're ready to mate.
Wow, it's like a chemical resume.
Haha, yeah, something like that. But hold on, isn't that kind of risky? I mean, advertising your presence like that, especially for a young ocelot trying to, get a foothold.
Yeah, you'd think they'd want to stay under the radar, avoid attracting, like, bigger, older ocelots that might want to fight them off.
Yeah. Well, ocelots are pretty smart about it. They'll often put their scent marks, like,
Yeah.
around the edges of their territory. That way, they're not directly challenging other ocelots.
So it's like a way of saying, hey, I'm here, but I'm not looking for trouble. Let's just stay out of each other's way. Okay.
Exactly. It's about minimizing conflict. And don't forget, they use their calls, too. Those yowls and chirps and stuff.
Right, right. But how do they use those sounds for, like, defending their territory? Is it like an ocelot yelling match?
Not really. They'll sometimes use calls to deter rivals, but it's more about avoiding those fights altogether. Like if a young ocelot hears a bigger male calling nearby, they might just decide to go a different way.
So it's more like, okay, I hear you, you hear me. Let's just keep our distance and not start a fight.
Exactly. It's a way of keeping the peace, even though they're solitary creatures. Pretty cool, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. It's amazing how they've figured out all these different ways to communicate and get along, even when they're mostly on their own. But this brings me to a question. With all of this focus on territory and avoiding conflict, how do they ever find mates? I mean, it seems like their solitary habits would make, like, romance kind of tricky.
That's a great question, and it brings us to one of the most interesting parts of ocelot behavior, how they go about mating.
Well, I'm all ears. How do these loner cats manage to find love?
That's a story for after a quick break. We'll be back soon to dive into the secrets of ocelot courtship and reproduction.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Ready to unravel the mystery of how these solitary ocelots actually find love. It's pretty fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle.
They spend most of their time alone, defending their territories, and then they have to switch gears and, like, go on a date. It doesn't really add up.
Well, even the most solitary animals, they have a drive to reproduce. It's like a biological imperative.
Right, of course.
And ocelots, they've developed some pretty cool ways to overcome those challenges, finding a mate when they live such isolated lives.
Okay, so what's the secret? Do they have, like, a special ocelot dating app?
Not quite, but remember all that scent marking we talked about?
Yeah, I remember.
Well, it plays a big part in how they find mates. Those scent marks aren't just for defending territory, they're also for, well, advertising.
So it's like an ocelot personal ad.
You could think of it that way. Those scents tell other ocelots if they're male or female, how old they are, if they're ready to mate, all that important stuff.
Wow, so much information in just a sniff. But scent can only travel so far, right? Especially in a forest. How do they, like, make sure other ocelots get the message?
That's where those vocalizations come in, the calls we talked about.
Uh-huh.
During mating season, both males and females, they'll get a lot more vocal. They use a bunch of different calls to attract mates.
So, like, they're serenading each other through the forest.
Exactly. Males will often climb up high in the trees so their calls can travel farther.
Makes sense.
And females will call back, letting the males know they're interested.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But doesn't all that calling and scent marking attract unwanted attention? Like from predators?
That's a good point. But ocelots are super stealthy. They usually do all this mating stuff at dusk or dawn when it's harder to see.
So they're using the twilight hours to find love and stay safe.
Smart. Okay, but once they find each other, how does it actually happen? Are there like any special courtship rituals or anything?
Well,